So I almost drowned when I was 10, and you're about to hear all about it. Honestly, I don't think the world is ready for this. This is going to be a big bomb dropped, but let's just get right into it and stay calm. So, without further ado, here we go. So this took place on a warm summer day in 2013. I was 10 years old, and my mom's boyfriend, and my mom's boyfriend's family had planned a trip. We had been planning this trip for a couple of weeks to a lake called South Holston Lake in Virginia. We were going to go there and swim, but I was going to fish, right? I wanted to fish. I didn't really care about swimming. I wanted to go there and catch some bluegill and a catfish and, have an awesome time. So the day finally came of the trip. We loaded up the car and we started driving down the road. Now remember, this took a very long time to get to. We drove for like 2.5 hours, right? This was not the first time I had been there, but it was definitely one of the longest drives getting there. Hours. So we finally pull up, car loaded full of people and loaded full of belongings, and meet up with some other family friends who weren't staying with us at the time. I barely knew these people, right? I only remember I had a crush on this one girl who was like 19 at the time and I was 10. So, now you can imagine how that went. We just teased and bullied each other, and that was my idea of flirting with her. Her name was Summer, by the way. So we got to the lake, we set everything up, everyone else was starting to swim and starting to drink and starting to have fun. We got some food and music going. But me, I didn't want no part of that. As I said before, I wanted to fish. So I got all of my stuff ready, begrudgingly slow, waiting on everyone else to set their stuff up. I couldn't start until they did. So they started swimming, and I obviously couldn't fish where they were swimming. So I walked over a good like 20 to 30 feet away from everyone where my line wouldn't be interfering with anyone at all. I was under all these trees with water in front of me. I was in sort of like a dome of trees, right? There was this big cove out in front of me with a hole in front of it where I could just see the whole open lake, and all around me were trees, right? But I had a good 10 to 15 feet of water. I was standing there doing my thing, casting around. I caught a few fish. I remember I caught 2 or 3. But the bite slowed down immensely, and I fished for about 20 to 30 minutes getting nothing, and I kept trying to cast in between those trees, but my hand-eye coordination and fishing skill was not very good at 10 years old, so I couldn't really do that. I was struggling, and I was getting very irritated because I kept getting hung up in the trees, and I kept casting in poor spots, and I wasn't getting any bites. So I was like, you know what? We came here to swim. I'm already wearing my swimming trunks, my swimming gear. So I'm gonna wade fish. So I decided to hop in the water and wade fish. That means like get in the water and fish. So I hopped in the water, and immediately the water was like up to my stomach. I don't know what I was even thinking, trying to go farther than that, because you can't really fish when the water's like super high. So I jumped in, the water's up to my stomach, and I kept trying to cast, but I still couldn't hit the spot I wanted. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna walk out a little bit. And I kept like taking these really slow, big steps, trying to make sure the bottom was there, because I did not know how to swim at the time. I truly did not know how to swim. I was taking my time walking, and the water was getting like very high. I don't know why I kept going. The water was up to here at one point, and I was like, you know what? This spot like still sucks. I'm gonna try to walk out a little more. So I remember I had perfect like casting range from my memory. I could have definitely just stood there like this with my arms above the water, with the water up to my chest, and started fishing. But I thought, why don't I walk out a little more? The water was already up to my chest, so I started walking. Water was getting just higher and higher, and when the water was up to my neck, and my hands were sticking out of the water with my pole, it still never crossed my mind that it was just way too deep. But I stopped for a second, and I noticed that the current of the lake was just way too strong for me to resist. Like, it kept pushing me forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards, and every time it would pull me backwards, it would pull me farther away from the shore. And my feet were barely scraping the bottom, and then eventually it got to where it was just my tippy toes scraping the bottom. And I started to panic a little bit. But when I say panic, I'm sort of overstating it, because to be honest, my 10-year-old brain wasn't really panicking. I was more like frustrated that this was happening and sort of embarrassed. that I was probably gonna have to call for help. So I'm sitting there doing all I can to get back, so I don't have to like be embarrassed about having to call for help. And I'm like scraping the bottom and scraping the bottom. I threw my fishing pole. Like I completely forgot that thing because I was like, you know, trying to fight for my life here, and it pulled me out far enough to where my toes were not touching the bottom at all anymore. So I get pulled out into the water, and at this point I'm just bobbing up and down. And I remember it being just like you imagine it would be. Like you're coming out of the water, going, and then getting sucked back down into the water, and you can just see like murky brown water, kind of like the River Monsters intro screen. I mean, the water wasn't necessarily like murky, super murky there, but that's all you could really see under the water was like the River Monsters intro screen. But I was just like coming up and down and like seeing the water, and I've never been able to even open my eyes underwater, so I was like doing this out of pure adrenaline and fear for my life. I was coming up and down and bobbing my head, and eventually I'm like, well, I'm completely screwed, so I'm gonna have to call for help. And I came back up and I was like, help, help. And my mom's boyfriend, I remember he started Usain Bolt. Wait, that's a runner. What's his name? He started Michael Phelps swimming towards me faster than I've ever seen a person swim before, just whoosh, through, making it through that water. He got to me in like 5 seconds from 30 feet away. He grabbed me, pulled me to the shore, set me down, and he's like, he wasn't mad or anything. He's like, are you good, man? Because he was shocked more than anything, and I didn't really know him for that long. This was one of the first few times that I had actually like hung out with him. You know, most of the time was just sitting at the house, so we didn't really know each other that much. You know, he set me down on the surface, and I don't remember like coughing up any water or anything, but I was definitely like in shock for a minute. I'm like, yeah, I'm totally fine. I was still kind of just embarrassed and frustrated at the whole situation, not really realizing the whole depth of it, right? It wasn't until I got home later, honestly, that I even realized, like, you know, I almost died. Like, I truly could have lost my life there. But I remember I slowly walked back over to everyone else, and everyone was like, are you okay? Are you okay? My embarrassment came true, but I'd rather face my embarrassment than face that murky ass, like, deep water. But you know, I just, you know, I was like, yeah, I'm fine, and I just hung out over there. Didn't really fish anymore, obviously, because I threw my pole in the water, and I was traumatized. I actually swam that day some more with everyone else, and at first I was too scared to even go out in the water. But I think I practiced swimming that day a little bit, actually. I somehow, some way, I'm not petrified of water now. I'm able to swim pretty decently, actually. I like jumping in pools of water in nature and swimming my way back up, as long as it's not super duper deep. But yeah, that's basically the whole story. You know, we just swam the rest of the day and had a normal event. Like, we went home later. That's all I really remember from this day, of course. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching if you did. And now, even though this is my first video, well, sort of, technically, it's time for a nature segment. You already know what it's time for. So I'm going to show you what we're working with for the start of this moth season. That's the end of the story. If you want to click off, you can now. But we still got a couple minutes left of nature segments, baby. Let me go show you what I'm working with this year. Alright, son, so here's what we got so far. We're kind of lacking this year, I'm not gonna lie. We really need to pick the pace up. I didn't really do too much moth breeding last year. Let me show you what we're working with so far this year. Here, it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you can tell at all. But we've got two. There's one, and there's two cocoons of Parharctia isabella, the common woolly bear. Sorry if you could barely hear me there. I had the mic far away from my face. But there's the common woolly bear cocoons. We got two of them. I found the larvae outside of my house and kept them for myself like a greedy old witch. And over here, we got a random pupa that I found. And I just want to see what it is. But yeah, that's all we got so far. This year's going to be a big moth breeding year. I plan to do more than I have in the last few years and actually, you know, put some real effort into it. I've been kind of lazy these past couple of years. Kind of lazy and lacking. I haven't been doing too much, you know, so it's time to really pick that up. But anyway, that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Yeah, that's it. Goodbye.